to this week's Let's Talk Aging. We're really excited to be starting up our second season of the series. And to start us off strong, today I'm speaking with business owner, Doula by Destiny, and the grand prize winner of the 2019 Boom Conference Pitch Competition, Valoria Walker. Valoria, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Molly. I really appreciate you asking me to come on. Let's talk aging. So I'm really proud to be here, really.
Wonderful. Well, thank you. Well, to get us started, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you started working in the field of aging?
Most of my career really was in the information technology arena. I started in information technology when we were talking about mainframes at IBM, back in the 1990s. And my last 17 years was in information technology in the healthcare environment. So I was a candy striper volunteer when I was very young. So I've always been in a hospital type of facility where people were either physically challenged or either mentally challenged. More about myself, I love to dance and I love to travel. So that's pretty much me, overall. I got into the aging arena or industry really by the influence of my mom, not really as a career, but my mom has really influenced my life. Her mother was the only child, and the only child had 18 children. So she made up, she made up for being the only child, okay? And out of the 18, 9 lived, and my mom was the oldest of the sibling. And eventually, when she was very young, one brother passed away. So she was the oldest of 8 children. And so basically all of her siblings came through her household. She was the big mama's house. I mean, she that's where we had dinners. So often my weekends were spent with older adults dancing and laughing and pretty much we had a reunion every weekend, so.
What is your career now in aging? You're a business owner, you're a recent graduate of the Erickson School?
Correct. So I graduated with my master's after my son challenged me to go back to school. And then right now I'm currently the founder of Aging Adult Services, LLC, doing business as Doula by Destiny. So I'm acting as an end-of-life doula for families and promoting the awareness of the end-of-life doula movement.
Wow. Okay. Well, that's wonderful. Thank you. And what is an end-of-life doula?
Well, that's a big question. So first of all, I want to say a doula, even before we jump into an end-of-life doula, a doula has been identified as a woman. When you look at the ancient Greece era, women supporting other women during the time that they were laboring and giving birth to their child. So a doula was there to help bring forth and nurture that relationship in support of the mother who was having the baby. So an end-of-life doula, we're on the opposite end. We are at the end where people are dying or they may have a terminal illness. It's not always aging adults, because death can come at any time. So some of us act as birthing doulas and end-of-life doulas, and some of us are end-of-life doulas across the span of life. My specialty is the end-of-life doula with aging adults or older adults. So, and it's basically the same thing as the birthing doula, but we run parallel as far as being, at the end of life and supporting people and their family members who are, near or at the end of life.
That's amazing. So I think traditionally we know that as hospice care.
Right.
So is an end-of-life doula, is it different? Is it the same thing as hospice care, or is it kind of expanded upon the field?
Well, it really depends on where you're getting your information from. You know, you have hospice administrators or organizations who feel that end of life doulas complement their services.
Mhm.
And then you have some that feel like there's some competition there. Um, but when I think of it, I think it's a little bit of everything, the same, different, and expanded services. And when I say same, I really mean that we are there to provide comfort, you know, to the client or the patient who is passing away. Um, we want that client to be pain free, and we want them to be comfortable. We also want to honor the patient's final wishes, you know, the things that they want. If they are on a specific diet, how can we advocate for giving them their final, you know, dinner or something that they prefer having? And then we also complement the care team and we support the care team. So in that way, we're the same. When we're talking about difference, end of life doulas, we are not on a time restriction. You know, we don't have to worry about changing shifts or documentation or um, turning over information to a shift, you know, to another shift. We're not task oriented. So, you know, a hospice RN or a hospice aide can come in and ask the client or the person, you know, do you need any medication? How is your pain? And then they're pretty much out documenting and going to the next, you know, patient to wash that patient or make sure that patient is being fed. But as a hired end of life doula, once we are hired based on, you know, our package, we can sit, for me, I do 4-hour increments. So I can sit, you know, in the room with the patient, whether they are responding to me, whether they're quiet or they just have me sitting there, and I have no pressure on me to document anything, you know, or to leave them for any reason, or I don't really have to update anyone, you know, about any type of circumstances that are going on, not unless I think it's in the best interest, you know, where I need to bring in the hospice aide or bring in the RN. But basically, I'm there in the presence for that person in their sacred space and just sitting with them and allowing them to obtain peace, you know, as they're approaching the end of life. So our RN nurse doesn't have that time. And it's not because I'm sure they don't want to, but it's their job to really deal with comfort care and dealing with physical pain management. Where end of life doula, we're there, we're dealing with the physical, we're dealing with the emotional, we're dealing with the mental, we're dealing with the psychological, and we don't provide, you know, we're not there as a medical physician or a medical capacity. We're totally non-medical in as far as administering medications. I mean, under some circumstances we can, but you know, that's when we develop a relationship with the family member and the patient, and they feel comfortable with us administering certain medications. But we're definitely not there from a medical capacity. We in that way, we definitely are not competing against, you know, a hospice RN or a hospice aide, because that's their training and that's their specialty and that's their role, and we have no desire to, you know, compete in that fashion. So that's how we're different. When it comes to expanding, our expansion for me, I think more about non-traditional, you know, things. When the hospice tray comes in, you know, is okay, we need you to eat at a certain time. We need to wash you at a certain time. You know, with the end of life doula, we're pretty much just relaxed. You know, I advocated for a lady last year, and I said, it was, I think, in July, and I said, would you like to go outside? And she's like looking at me saying, go outside. I said, sure. I said, it is so gorgeous. would you like to go outside? And she said, sure. So I went to the hospice RN and I said, well, what can we do to take her outside? And she's like, well, her bed can actually be moved outside. So I went in and I, messed with the racks, and she said, you can get it started and I'll just come in. And I said, okay. So we start moving her bed through her French doors. We got her outside, and about 10 minutes later, she says, it's too hot out here. I want to go back. So we did. We moved her back inside, and she passed away the next day.
Oh, but she got to be outside.
But she got to be outside.
Wow.
So we try to incorporate things that are different. I tell my son, I love the beach. I'm looking at water right now, and it's like, oh, take me to Myrtle Beach and just, let me pass away there. So, we don't do the traditional things. We don't push the fact that someone has to be buried 6 feet under, because that's not state law, by Maryland. We do visual plans where, what is it that you want? I mean, do you want to go outside? Do you want certain music to be played? Do you want candles to be going on? And so we try to, just like when people go into a nursing home or an assisted living, we try to make that environment as home-like as possible. Right. And so while we're in the care of hospice, or if we're at home, we feel privileged to be in that sacred place, and we feel honored to be in that sacred place. So we try to provide a quality of life at the end of life. And we try to bring all that together.
Wow. So important. There's something to so there's quality of care, but then the quality of life. I think it's an amazing point to make. And
right.
It really sounds like you can just be with someone in this time, rather than while you're still working and it is, your career, but the fact that you're able to just be with somebody, I think speaks to a need in healthcare in general, because there's a lot of things kind of separating us emotionally from the people that we work with.
Right.
I love this option because sometimes people just need another person to be there.
Exactly.
So that's amazing. And you were kind of talking about formulating a plan with somebody as you're working with them to see what they would want, whether it is to go outside, whether it is just to be inside, or how do you find that conversation happens? Are they prepared for that conversation when they meet with you? Do families already know what their loved ones want? What do you typically find?
Well, it really depends on where they are in their, I guess I would say, their dying journey. I can say that with the loss of my mom, and I can give you her story, we thought we was pretty much prepared. We lost her May of 2011 to a hospice facility in Atlanta, Georgia. And my mom was 4'11". She weighed about 100 pounds. She decided that she didn't want dialysis anymore while she was in the hospital. So we had hospice. The doctor said, well, I'm going to recommend hospice. So you're going to go with what the doctor recommend, not even thinking, well, maybe I should be getting a second opinion of another hospice facility. I mean, this is what the hospital is referring to me, so this is what I'm going to go with. Mm-hmm. Then you're dealing with all these medical crises, end of life, last minute decisions. So you are pretty much bombarded with information. So anything that anybody gives you, pretty much that's what you're going to go with. Mm-hmm. And the hospice representative came into the hospital and was talking to us, and it was like Charlie Brown teacher. Wong, 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 wong. She was saying something, but it was going through like this, and we wasn't really interpreting it. So eventually we moved my mom there within 24 hours. But within 24 hours of her being there, she was administered 2 powerful medications twice. And so she went, eventually drifted off to sleep. I left my sister there because my sister was her primary caregiver. And I went back to my mom's home. When I came in the next day, my sister told me that they had administered 2 more doses of a medication while my mom was asleep. So the question is, why did you administer another dose of medication when she was already asleep? And so 2 or 3 days later passed after that, and my mom never woke up. She passed away in her sleep, while my brother was on the way to get there. So we never really had the closure that we was expecting. So again, although we thought we was prepared, for this, so many different things come up at the end of life that people are just not prepared for. They prepare for the funeral arrangements, who's going to take the body, but they really don't prepare themselves for the care, that may be needed at the end of life. And so, that's what kind of got me started on this. So from the most part, most families are not prepared. When I talk about planning and the planning that I was talking about as far as candles, that was visual planning. But if we start, the preferred time is when there are no medical crises, when there's no adverse diagnosis, where we're healthy, and we can talk about advanced care planning. And in that, we're talking about, if I become mentally incapable of making medical decisions, who's going to make those decisions for me? And that's naming the healthcare proxy. And then we have a second part to that advanced care planning, which is the living will. And that's where I am giving my preferences as far as life-sustaining treatment. So do I want to be resuscitated? Do I want to be hydrated with tools, with PECs or lines, do I want to continually be fed? So those are the things that deal with advanced care plan. And if we can get society to lower their anxiety on talking about death and get that advanced care planning in place, we would know what to do, at the end of life. But because we don't have that conversation, everyone is scrambling at the end when there's a medical crisis. And then the doctor is looking for the family to make a decision. And let's say in my case, there was, me, my brother, my sister. If my brother says, well, I want mom to continue to be fed, intravenously, and I'm saying, no, I don't want her. So the doctor's not going to go with the oldest child or the youngest child. Now we are leaving the control of the decision making in the hands of the doctor. Right. And so advanced care planning is the preferred way to start having people talk about planning for the end of life. And I also think that we're paying for the cost of living longer, unfortunately, because two questions is, how is our quality of life at the end of life when we're 100? Most people say, when you say, how long do you want to live? Most people say they kind of cut it off at 100. No one is saying I want to live to 200 or 150, so, and I don't know why, but, is our quality of life good when we're, are at the age of 100 years old? We know common sense is going to let us know that we can't do the things that we do at 65 and 70, if we're healthy without any type of illnesses or anything. And then, we put our children into the sandwich, by living longer, by taking care of us and taking care of their children, at the same time. And we often have to think about our autonomy, you know, when we get a certain age, will we be able to make decisions in our best interest? You know, if I want to stay in my home and die, but I have the tendency to fall, you know, what is my caregiver going to do? Are they going to make a decision to be there with me, to move me into their home, or to move me into, you know, some type of you know, institutional, you know, to keep me safe. And so, you know, living longer has pros and cons, you
Yeah.
know, about everything.
Yeah, it does. And I wonder, so I think you make a really great point that a lot of people are taking care of their families, but there is a responsibility of the person in need of care to have these decisions, um, maybe not already made, but have a general idea of what they want so that the family member who's taking care of them doesn't have to make those decisions for them.
Exactly.
But it does go both ways, and I guess because there is no care plan generally, a lot of people aren't making these care plans. Do you find that family members are open to having the conversation once it's time, or is there still kind of this uneasiness around the conversation, even when they're in the midst of it?
There's still some uneasiness. We just don't, you know, even when we are forced into making that medical decision, a lot of times we still just go under the guidance of the doctor, you know, and then that also pulls in all these family dynamics that don't necessarily have to be involved, you know, because like I said, now you have brother B that wants mom to continue to live, and you have sister A who's saying no. So now you've created another crisis right in the midst of the crisis for the person who is passing away, which interrupts the peace that they could be having, which is why end of life doula is there to try to calm some of that chaos down, you know, that could have been avoided if we would have taken the courage to have the conversation in the beginning. Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And how, as end of life doula, how do you walk with somebody through this conversation? Um, are you able um, because I imagine you can't make decisions for them, but
Right.
how do you ease them into this type of conversation?
Well, let's start with my own personal experience. I started immediately talking to my son about my wishes upon my mom's death. And that's, you know, 2020, I would say that was probably about 6 years ago. So he was probably around 23. So he's not really interested in hearing his mom's plans on, you know, and as I continue to pursue my business as an end of life doula, he said, you know, mom, you're really not going to give this idea up. And I'm like, it's not an idea, it's something that's going to happen. I'm just trying to prepare you for it, like I prepare you for pretty much everything else. And so eventually we were sitting at the table one day, and he said, mom, he said, you know, he said, I don't want to be buried. He said, I want to be cremated.
Oh,
And he had that. And my thing, Molly, was I would have buried him,
right.
you know? And so in a way I would have dishonored him
Mhm.
based on us not having the conversation, you know? So a lot of times we are also dishonoring people because we don't want to have the conversation. And another example, I was sitting with a lady, 94, and I walked in her room one day and she said, Val, she said, this is what I want at my funeral. And I'm like, okay, I wasn't expecting this today, but we're here, so let's do it. And I said, well, did you have this conversation with your son? And she said, no. He knows who the funeral home is. He knows who's supposed to pick up my body, but I haven't had this conversation. And so she went into every detail of what she wanted.
Mm.
I later called the son and I said, well, your mom talked to me about what she wanted to wear and she wanted for her funeral arrangements. And I said, do you want to meet in person? Do you want me to have the conversation over the phone now? Do you want me to call you later? Do you want me to email you? He said, no, let's have the conversation now. And I told him everything. And he said, wow, Val, he said, that was absolutely not what I was going to bury her in. He said she was a usher for our church for 40 years. And I just knew she would want her usher uniform. That was not what mom wanted. She did not want that at all. And so it was hard having a conversation even over the phone, but he was relieved that now he knew, exactly what mom wanted. And I actually went to the funeral and mom was honored according to what she told me. So it made me feel good that she used me as the mediator. She didn't feel her son visited her every day, pretty much like I was visiting once a week. She could have had the conversation with the son, but sometimes that family relationship is so close, and the heart is so close to where, we're not willing to digest that conversation. And it took over 7 to 8 years for me to get my son to tell me what he wanted. So it's not a conversation where you're just going to bring it up over Thanksgiving and, and that's not it, and that's pretty much it. It's an ongoing conversation, and you just have to sit down and kind of, I would say, spoon feed it maybe in a gentle and sensitive way, and just kind of let people swallow it. And, not every time that you see them, you have to bring it up, but they need to know that when they do see you, you're going to be gently pushing them to be able to prepare a plan that's going to help them at the end of life. Yeah. And so, yeah.
I love that. Because once you feel comfortable and like you're in a safe space and you can have this conversation, I think there is a sense of relief that comes that it's not as scary as we're making it out to be. That, I'm still living right now. I'm still breathing. These decisions are just going to allow me to continue to make decisions for myself even when I'm not able to. Yeah.
And I've even had people say, Val, you take the way that you talk about it, you take the scariness, you take the scariness out of it. And, I often ask people, well, when you are having a baby, do you go out and get the crib the same day? When you are planning your wedding, do you go and get your wedding dress the morning of your wedding? No, you do not. So let's just deal with this, talk about it, get the paper out of the way, put it up where everybody knows it, and then you know that it's taken care of, which takes some of the burden off of the family member and some of the pressure off of you avoiding this topic every time it comes to your mind. Well, if this happened or this happened, because it comes in our subconscious, So let's just deal with it, get it taken care of, and then we can go on living, is what I say.
Wow. I love those analogies. I love them. That's so true. We plan for everything, and yet
we do.
Such a major life event, and we don't. We shy away from it. So,
exactly.
I'm going to quote you on that one.
Sure.
So earlier we were talking about the difference in hospice care and the end of life doula and kind of the professional aspect of it. How do you find that the professional world embraces this conversation and the work of that end of life doula?
Well, it really depends on pretty much like everything else, our own experiences, the access that we have, the income that we have. I mean, I see even a difference with men knowing about doula, because again, it's that birthing doula surrounds the fact of, women being with birth. And so, of course, women know more about the birthing doula. And then when you talk about the end of life doula, it clicks in their mind that, okay, now I understand where, talking with most men, it's like, I have no clue about what you're talking about. So, it depends on the professional level. Also, I just was talking to my personal doctor about it, and he was very interested, and he always, whenever I talk to someone about it, the end of life doula, we say we don't want to talk about it, but every time I talk with someone, they always share
Yeah.
some event that has happened in their life. I was on a timeshare presentation, the earlier part of this year. And the lady said, well, what do you do? I said, I'm an end of life doula. She stopped the presentation. We was walking around. We was walking around in this gorgeous timeshare. She's like, oh, I lost my father. And we stayed on that for about 15 minutes. And then we was able to continue with the timeshare presentation. So some people get it, and then some people, they just don't have an idea about it. And like I say, with hospice, you have some people that are open to the profession of the end of life doula, and then you have some that feels it's we're coming in to compete and take away from that. But we're definitely not there to take away or interrupt any type of care plan that hospice has already facilitated for the patient.
Right.
And so, it depends. It could be men, women, race, religion, has things to do with end of life care. A lot of people are so in connected to religion that they're waiting for that last minute miracle, and that gets in the way sometime of making, I'm going to say, common sense decisions, because you can make those common sense decisions, but you still can wait on the miracle or have faith in the miracle and don't feel like you're cheating on your belief just because you are coming up with an end of life plan. So, it's a lot of things that are going on with professionals and with families that it can vary. Some people get it, some people don't. Some people accept it. Some people are like, no, I'll pass this time.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that's interesting. And I think, I don't know, I think you're right. Earlier you had said that as a society, we kind of need to feel a little bit more comfortable and kind of catch up to this conversation. And I agree with you. And I think maybe not end of life doula is the right path for everyone,
Mm-hmm.
but having some sort of understanding of support in this time, because you're offering support in a time that a lot of people don't know what they're doing. They don't know what
Exactly.
the next step is. So
Ex-
it's nice to know that you're there and you're available, and that there is an option like this out there.
Yeah.
It's reassuring.
Yeah, that's true. And also with all caregivers are in, they may not even be in the same state, so you have long distance caregiving and no one's actually there,
Right.
with the parent or the family member. So, we try to also fill in that gap of care, because people can't just uproot their lives and relocate, so we try to also fill in that gap of care also.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a that's a lot.
It is a lot.
Yeah,
It's a lot.
a lot in a very emotional time. So
Right. And not too many of us are saying, "Oh, I'm going to wake up today and be an end of life doula." It,
no,
you
no.
know, no.
You see why I think it definitely takes a type of spirit to be able to, because it does sound like you just need to kind of leave yourself at the door sometimes and
Mhm.
be whatever the person needs you to be, in that moment, and to be that flexible is um, is amazing. It's beautiful that you're able to do that for these people. So
Thank you.
um,
Thank
so I do want to talk about your recent grand prize.
you.
Uh,
Yay.
the, um, so it's the AARP's Boom Conference Pitch Competition.
Exactly.
You just recently won this for 2019, and
Right.
um, such a big deal. Congratulations! Could you tell us
Thank
a
you.
little bit about your pitch and the whole process?
So that's a story within itself, Molly.
We got
So,
time.
so I went to this women's business networking event. And of course, we're networking. I'm telling people about the end of life doula. And the lady came to me and she said, well, oh, you should pitch your idea. We are doing something for business owners 45 years and older. And I'm like, I don't have time. I'm trying to start, start my business. And so she said, well, I'm going to send you the information. And I'm like, well, okay. And I looked at the information, and one of the requirements is that you have to provide a 5-page executive summary with the financials and everything. And I actually emailed her back. I said, I can't, this is too much. It's too time consuming. And she's like, really, do you think so? And I'm like, yes. And so I actually walked away from it. Yes, I did not go for it. And a couple of the week that it was due, Friday, something kept saying, like you were saying, you have to have a certain spirit. Mm-hmm. Something was saying, apply, go, continue to. So I couldn't continue to disobey this consciousness that was going on with me. And so I applied the last minute, and they gave an extension. So I was able to go back in and re-edit some of the things. I got an email saying that you had advanced to the second round. And we had a pitch coach that we met every week for about 2 or 3 hours. And she helped us, trained us to pitch our business. And after that, the day of the competition, of course, I'm nervous. It's like, oh, I don't want to do this. Why did I get myself into this? And really went up there and just kind of nailed it, and just, put it out there, and had no idea, that I was going to be the grand prize winner. And so I'm gonna have to share the video with you. I mean, when they called me up, I could barely go up the stage because I was crying. And when I get on the stage, you can see I didn't have makeup on, but you can see teary eyes. I'm sniffling, and I was in shock. Right. So I'm holding the check up completely in shock. Half of the time I was smiling, half of the time I was staring out. And so it was an awesome milestone for me, and a confidence builder, and just letting me know, what, Val, at the times that you feel like you're stuck in life, that you are on the right path and you're doing exactly what you're supposed to be doing. So, continue to go on that path.
Right. That's amazing. So wait, they didn't tell you ahead of time? You found out that day?
As far as the competition? And after, and the thing about it is that there was 6 or 7 companies. And so you didn't know who the second or the third winner was going to be up, because they call a second runner up first. Right. And so I'm still sitting at the table with 6 other businesses, right? And the competition was I think it started at 1:30. They made the announcement at 3:30. So after they announced the second winner, then they said, okay, we're now going to the grand prize winner. And so I'm sitting at the table with all these people, and they called my name, and I'm like having a hot flash and crying at the same time, trying to get up. The MC had to help me up the stairs. I was just totally like overwhelmed with the whole thing. And again, this is an opportunity that I would have missed out if I hadn't listened to my true self and my inner calling saying, do this and go ahead and apply. So that's just a hint for people. Right. Listen, exactly. Exactly.
Can always get in the way, but
exactly, so.
So what was your pitch? Was it just your business? Not just your business, but was it your business that won the pitch?
It was my business. I started out with the story that I just told you about my mom, and then identified a lot of the problems that are happening at the end of life, that's getting in the way of providing quality of life at the end of life. I talked about caregiver high turnover, and the shortages that we have in the caregiving, professional caregivers, that we go to help us. I talked about the shortage there. I also talked about the demand for an increase of 45% of geriatricians that will be needed in 2025. And no one's going to medical school to be a geriatrician because the pay is not as well as a primary care physician. And so the shortage is like, I can't remember the numbers right now, but the shortage is like, it's almost like a one geriatrician will need to take care of 700 patients in order to meet the demand, and that's not going to happen.
No.
And so, and they're predicting all these changes to take place between 2013 and 2025. Then there's also, with the cohort of the baby boomers, there's a 4.1 million expectation of deaths that started in 2013 that's not going to taper off until 2055. That's 4.1 million deaths.
Wow.
That's expected to happen between 2013 and 2055. So who's supporting that? Who's supporting the geriatricians? If there's a shortage, who's taking care of the aging population if there's a shortage of geriatricians? Who's taking care of the aging population if there's a shortage of professional caregivers? And then I also talked about Medicare costs at the end of life is 4 times higher for people that are 85, I believe, and older. So Medicare is paying like $35,000 for people who are at the end of life, yet they're only paying $9,000 for people that are 65 years and older, before 85, that are healthy. So 35,000 is going to end of life, and 9,000 is going towards people that are healthy. So
wow,
that's a big gap. So why is that?
Right.
Why is that? And a lot of that is because we're performing heart stents on people that are 85 years old, and one thing that is in the description of a end of life doula is not being judgmental. And so I can't say, why are you doing a open heart surgery on someone that's 84 years old, that's only going to last an additional 2 or 3 months.
Right.
That 2 or 3 months is a lot for that person, that patient, and for the family member. But how much is the cost? What's the cost of performing a stent? Like I said, why give my mom 2 medications, powerful medications? That's a cost. Why are you giving her a powerful medication and she's already asleep? And you know that she is not going to do dialysis anymore. So why are we even administering medication, at that point? So we have, unwarranted surgeries. We have unwarranted medications that may or may not improve the quality of life, that's causing healthcare costs to rise at the end of life without improving the quality of life at the end of life. So I talked about that, and then I went into my marketing part and also talking about why I wanted to, I did a call to action asking why I want the $4,000 to $6,000 and how I would use it for my business.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah.
Oh, you see why you won. Yeah, because, well, and two, I don't know if this is, and correct me if I'm wrong, but if the patient is more comfortable in saying, no, I don't want that surgery, I don't want these like life extending measures, because I'm comfortable, I've already made my decisions, I've already had this conversation with my family, then there's a lot that the patient can do to stop those costs.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly, exactly. But you also have the influence of the doctor saying, well, there's one more trial,
Right.
that we can try.
Wow.
Or you have the pressure of the family was, well, we're not ready for you to go, so let's do this. So even though those are, and that's why you also need a strong neutral person there to say, no, that's where the advanced care planning comes in.
Right.
No, this is what he or she said, and this is what we're going to do in spite of what the doctor says and in spite of what another family member says.
Wow.
We have it written down, and this is what we're going to do. So you need a trusted and strong person that has the backbone to be able to stand up against the medical institution and also the family members.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. I think that what you're doing is so needed and so important and just really inspiring. I'm very inspired at the moment. And I have two kind of questions to wrap up our conversation. And
Okay.
the first is, how does someone become an end of life doula? Is how this isn't a traditional career path. I think a lot of people don't know that aging in general can be a career path.
Hmm.
But how would you suggest somebody that is interested in this would get into the field?
So when I talk to most end of life doulas, they feel that it's a calling. Like I said, it's not anything that we just wake up and say, oh, we're going to study for this.
Right.
They feel led to, by their spirit, I would say, to be in this field. Because we're entering into the sacredness of a person. We don't want to trample over that at all. So in most cases, again, with talking to most end of life doulas, death has kind of always been around in their psyche, or they've always been easy with talking about it. They've never really shied away from it. And so I think if you have that longing within you, that's a good guide to that you should pursue as far as becoming an end of life doula. The profession is so new and so emerging, that there are no real certifications that have been standardized right now. Organizations that are developing training classes for certification. So right now, we just have to wait and see what the National Hospice and Palliative Care Organization is going to do as far as defining best practices for us. And so we just mentor each other, go into hospice facilities and volunteer to get your training there, mentor or develop another relationship with another end of life doula and train under them, and see if it's something that you really want to do, and if there's an environment, if that's the environment that you really want to be in.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, thank you for that. That's good to know. And then my second question is, for somebody in search of an end of life doula, how would they contact you? And now I am going to be putting all of your information down below in the
Mm-hmm.
comment section, but where do they find you on your website? Do you have a preferred phone number?
Yeah, so my phone number, my website is www.doulabydestiny.com. My phone number is 410-921-05, excuse me, 0105. That's 410-921-0105. I'm also on the Anelda Doula directory, and that's INELDA. So you can, get me that way. You have my social media links. I have a Doula by Destiny social media link, and I have Aging Adult Services social media link. So I can be contacted that way. And on my website, which is also in the process of being redesigned, but my services are there. And if for any reason they can't get to my services or are having some problems, they can call me on the 410-921-0105 number. And hopefully I'll be able to serve them in the way that they feel honored.
I'm sure. I mean, just based on this conversation alone. I mean, we've talked before, but I can definitely, I can see this as your calling. It's all over your face when you're talking about it. And it's amazing to know that there's someone out there like you doing this work, because it's such a needed aspect to end of life care. And thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. I've enjoyed this conversation. I had my little notes here, but I wanted to keep on track. So I hope I didn't take us off too much today.
Oh, you were amazing. You were amazing. So again, I'm going to be sharing your information down below. And thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day.